Okay, so just while the first panellists are taking their seats, maybe just a couple of comments in relation to the whole day. So as has been said, the idea is to have a really good open discussion here. And because we've people coming from many different backgrounds, many different sets of expertise, it's a real opportunity to kind of get into the nitty-gritty. Both the Taoiseach, I think, and the Minister and Gail have commented on the fact that this has to be a collaborative approach. We have to have everybody involved in addressing these issues, otherwise it's simply not going to work. So I'd ask you particularly during the day to enter into these discussions in an open way. I know you will, but perhaps to bear in mind that it would be really useful to engage with each other rather than to advocate. And one of the things that's really important about a day like today is it is an opportunity to widen the networks. Some of you may know each other really, really well, and some of you may be meeting for the first time. So do please use the day to have an opportunity to talk to people, particularly from other sectors or from other organisations that you may not know, because this will be an ongoing conversation, there's no doubt about that, and the action that needs to be taken will be taken over quite a long period of time. So I was reminded of that the other day. I came across something about the first motor car was sold commercially in something like 1888, but it was something like 50 years before they got around to doing things like licenses and driving tests in Britain. So these new technologies do take time, and maybe there were groups like this in 1890s having a discussion about how they were going to handle the motor car. So this is the motor car of today. I'd like to welcome the first panel, and the way the panel is going to work is quite informal. We're going to get a discussion going, get a sense of what different organisations and different people are doing on the issues, and this is really to inform the table discussions, which we will then get to. So we have a really good mixed panel for you. And we're going to be thinking about things like education and awareness, the role of the government and stakeholders, and the regulatory changes that might be necessary as we deal with this issue. So these were some of the issues that were particularly prioritised by participants today. You have bios in your packs, so I'm not going to get into a lengthy description of everybody if you have a quick look. But just to welcome everybody, we have from Google, Ryan Mead. From the Children's Rights Alliance, Tanya Ward. From An Garda Síochána, Detective Superintendent Declan Daly. From the National Parents Council, Anya Lynch. Hotline.ie, Anna Nicolescu. And from the WebWise Advisory Panel, Shifra Harkin. And I think sometimes in the discussions that we have about any of these kinds of issues and how we're going to manage and plan and all of that, we do forget that young people's views are actually so central to this issue, but also that they have a lot to teach us. And I think that's a really valuable part of today, is that everybody is in the room, not just the industry and the NGOs and government. We have everybody in the room that's concerned, parents, young people, teachers, and so on. So I'm going to ask Tanya to kick off. I'm going to keep it kind of informal. I'll ask each panellist to say a few things, and they may ask each other questions as well, and I may ask them some questions, and we'll try and keep it to time. Okay, so Tanya.
Okay, thank you very much. So in my 4 minutes, I suppose I wanted to give you a survey of some of the issues that we see in the Children's Rights Alliance that are fundamental for this debate, and I have to say I think this debate is really timely. It's great to see so many ministers coming together and committing to actually take action in the online safety world. So a third of global users at the moment are children under the age of 18. That is pretty staggering when you think of the internet and the online world. So it really tells you that we need to be putting children at the very centre of developing laws and policies and practices when it comes to the online world. In Ireland, the research is telling us that the first experience of using the internet on average is about 9, but you'll always read the newspapers and hear of 4-year-olds that are on the internet as well. So we're looking at very young children being on the internet. So what does that mean, and what kind of impact did that have on them? Well, what's really happening, I suppose, in this debate is I think safety issues have been dominating this debate, and I think we need to look at it in a broader way and recognise that the holistic child, the whole child, the fact that a child has rights, We have them in the Constitution. We got out as a people in 2012 and we gave them rights in the Constitution. So what does that mean? Well, it means when we're making decisions affecting them, we should be consulting them. We have to make decisions in their best interests. We can't discriminate against them. We have to protect them from abuse and neglect. We have to protect their privacy, and we have to respect their right to participation and expression. All of these matter on the online world as they do in the real world. But the other piece that we often forget from a children's rights approach is we have to support parents as well as the primary duty bearer, as the primary caregiver to protect and provide for their child. And that's part of a children's rights approach. So what are the issues overall? Well, on the privacy side, and I'm starting with the privacy side because of the recent debate around the digital age of consent, one of the big issues that we see is in relation to how children's data is being used by industry and tech companies. The same issues sometimes are true for adults, but it has a particular impact on children. So, for example, we know that children's data is used, is sold on. You'll hear situations where children are exposed to advertisements that are very inappropriate for them. Any of you listening to the debate on digital age consent last week, you would have heard Senator Linda Ryan talk about her 10-year-old being exposed to advertisements for lip fillers and consistently being exposed to those kind of advertisements. We've seen research showing us that children between the ages of 12 and 17, about 70% of them will have been exposed to online advertising for alcohol. And if you think of the government is at the moment in the Oireachtas is pushing through legislation to delay the point that a child begins to start drinking and are using advertising controls to do that, doesn't cover online advertising. You can see the real gap there because we know if children are exposed to online advertising, any form of advertising, because they are more suggestive, they are more likely to be influenced by it. Other privacy issues relate to GP services, location services. They've kind of crept up upon us. Some children will talk about them being used and enabling bullies to be able to locate them. In very rare circumstances, it has to be said, you do get situations where predators are using location services to locate children. Children often don't know how to navigate and switch on the privacy protections on any particular platforms. That's a kind of a whole package of issues at the moment. On the other side then, in the safety area, young people will talk about being exposed to inappropriate content quite often on different websites. And we know that when they're exposed to inappropriate content, particularly of a sexual nature, it can lead to early sexualization. We know that children and young people have been exposed to people who are grooming online. These are rare exceptions, it has to be said, but it does happen. And they don't necessarily have the skills and ability to understand what to do when that actually happens, because there's lots of different education measures out there, but what young people will say to you, they don't necessarily have the technical skills or what's called the evaluative skills to deal with these types of situations. And you have that same debate in child protection in the material world or the real world anyway. You can put lots of child protection measures in place, but you have to educate children and empower them from a very young age about the harm that can come to them in an appropriate way and about how they can empower themselves and stand up for themselves as well. And obviously then the other safety issues at the further end that are very concerning is in relation to images of child sex abuse. As the Minister mentioned, we have new legislation, new offences there to try and target this type of crime. It is critically important. If you talk to organisations such as 1 in 4 that work with perpetrators of abuse, they will say they started off looking at images of child abuse and then they go on to harm a child. So we need to ask ourselves, are we putting enough in terms of giving Declan enough money and resources to investigate this type of crime? Does he have all the powers he needs to investigate this type of crime? And they're just a survey of some of the issues that are impacting on children. But when we're thinking about the solutions to all of this, we have to think about proportionate solutions, and we also have to think about the amount of good that the online world does do for children. It's really important for their life, their education. Most children, when you look at the surveys, they say they're using the online world to communicate with each other. And for very vulnerable children, let's say, children who are LGBTI and are very isolated, they are using online forums to communicate with each other and to get support and to help them make decisions and talk to their parents about some of the issues that are impacting on their lives. So it's really important when we try and come up with these solutions that we do think about the positives of the online world and we balance our protective measures versus our access measures.
Okay, thanks for that, Tanya. So that's a really good opening, just to remind us all that we did actually give children's rights very, very formally. But can I maybe take up what you're saying about the fact that this is a medium that it's very easy for children to access, and for things that are, they may not be looking for inappropriate things, but that's what they can often find. And maybe I can turn to you, Anna, and you can tell us a little bit about what hotline.ie is doing in this regard and how your organisation is approaching this issue.
Sure. By means of introduction, ISPAI is the legal entity running the hotline.ie service. 2 decades ago, when ISPAI was established, the internet industry consisted of only internet access providers, to be precise, all 5 of them. Up to 2010, there was a reasonable balance between readiness for change and relatively steady but constant evolving internet uptake, industry, digital technologies, connected devices, and so on. I think we have reached a point where we cannot afford to spend a decade to learn, prepare, and adapt. We only have now. And for which we need to change the way we conceptualize and forge responses in the area of online safety, including child sexual abuse and exploitation, and take what we have learned collectively in order to amp it up and come up with innovative solutions that are fit for the future. We must start looking ahead and think in terms of how will a national response look in a 5 years time frame, taking into consideration, virtual reality, Internet of Things, and so on and so forth. However, as we are on a very tight schedule with a very ambitious agenda, I will move on to talking about what we currently do. So the hotline.ie service provides a mechanism to public where they can report anonymously suspected illegal content, particularly child sexual abuse imagery, legally known as child pornography. The hotline assesses all the reports that we get and determines whether or not they are possibly child pornography under Irish legislation. The hotline mission is to have every occurrence of child sexual abuse imagery removed from the internet, irrespective of where in the world it may be hosted, obviously with focus on the Irish jurisdiction. We also work as part of the Irish Safer Internet Centre alongside WebWise, ISPCC, NPC, and under the coordination of the Office for Internet Safety. We operate under strict procedures agreed with the Department of Justice and Equality and National Law Enforcement. Given the global nature of the internet, we work in collaboration with 51 other internet hotlines in 47 countries worldwide, which come together under the umbrella association known as InHope, and through InHope with Europol and Interpol. We make sure that every identified child sexual abuse imagery is contributed to Interpol's child sexual exploitation database to support law enforcement investigation and for the purpose of victim and offender identification. I'd have to say that the sheer existence of the hotline would not be possible without the collaborative support that we get from industry representatives, ISPI members, some of which I can see here today, like Virgin Media, Google, Air, and obviously the grant aid support that we receive from the European Commission. So in terms of that kind of would be my...
Okay. Thanks for that. I mean, I think that gives us a sense of just the speed of change, that it's so hard to get on top of the current situation, and yet there's more technology coming really, really fast down the line.
Yes, and we need to make sure that we have a multidisciplinary approach to this whole area, and we need to think, in terms of deterring predatory behavior and early intervention as well. Is not just dealing with what we know today. And we also need to think what happens, in a world where child sexual abuse and exploitation is no longer image-based and no longer web-based.
Okay.
So I think we need to work with industry, particularly with large companies like Google, which obviously have abuse teams and own big data sets, and get a better understanding of this whole phenomenon and how it's evolving, emerging trends, distribution patterns, also movement patterns. And I have to say that particularly in the area of child sexual abuse and exploitation online, we need to have an international, multi-stakeholder, coordinated approach underpinned by the national model. And we need to work together. I think we can do so much more if we come together and use what we all know in trying to put out there solutions which, as I said, are innovative.
Okay, thanks for that, Anna. Damien, can I come to you from that? Because we have on the one hand the rights of children and the advantages and opportunities of technology. We have the work that's being done to try and constrain some of the bad things, but you're dealing with the leading edge of that bad stuff. So could you tell us a little bit about what the key issues for you at the moment are, and where you see this going, and what's needed in order to deal with it?
Well, firstly, you're all very welcome. We're delighted to be here today. We're looking at the range of people that are here today, and it's encouraging to see that mix, and it's exciting to predict the conversation that's going to take place over the next couple of hours, and that's a very, very good thing. Obviously, on Garda Síochána, we, as you'd expect and as you know, our role as law enforcement, and specifically in around the targeting and the investigation of crimes. But in relation to abuse of children, there's a dual role there. So it's obviously, yes, it's the investigation of the crime, but also a huge remit there in child protection. Working with TUSLA is an exceptionally important part, and in relation to online abuse, working beyond those those sort of internal state stakeholders is important as well. The few minutes that I have, I'm going to talk about the current trends, what we're seeing particularly at the moment, and the worrying aspects that we see. In terms of actions, I see our role, what we're targeting at the moment, is three specific roles at the moment. Obviously, the investigation. It's a very, very important that investigation role, that we target individuals, the perpetrators are online. You saw there from the video there, Operation Catch. That's the start of it. That's our proactive work. We do that work on a daily basis. Operation Catch was designed really to show, the community at large, the importance that we put on targeting, and to show perpetrators themselves, to give them a sort of a shock and say, there's a knock coming to your door. And we will be doing Operation Catch for the rest of 2018, and then in 2019 we will run a similar operation as well, and into the future. Obviously, awareness is really important. I can't emphasise that. Education, awareness. If children are aware of the dangers, then they're forewarned, they're forearmed. It's important. Web-wise, and our own media campaigns are all vital aspects of that. Our collaboration with TUSLA, very, very important. That the state agencies are working together to protect children. That's really, really important. In terms of our current dangers, very quickly, and I know I'm speaking to an educated audience here, so forgive me for that. Online grooming, where children are targeted by paedophiles so that they can meet up with those children for the purpose of sexual encounters. that happens. We've had a couple of recent, high-profile cases, and you can see the dangers there. It's not just limited to certain type of people, it's open to all of them. So we put a lot of work into that to make sure that those people are protected. The industry, Facebook, Google, they give a lot of information, they provide a lot to NECMEC that allows us to have an early warning of that sort of where children are targeted. Catfishing. A catfish is a fish that, is a fish but looks like a cat. And that's online. From an online perspective, you have an issue where somebody pretends to be a 15-year-old boy and is targeting, a young girl, but actually he's, a middle-aged man, a paedophile who has a sexual interest in children, and he's pretending to be somebody that he's not in order to get images or to get, to meet that person, whatever. So that's really, really important that we target. They're very complex investigations, and that happens a lot. In relation to that type of crime, one of the worrying aspects of that crime is that we see, more frequently than I would like, is that sometimes we see young people themselves targeting children that way, so exploiting that way. Sex mailing, again, is another particular issue, and coercion is another particular issue where, perpetrators and suspects get information from, images maybe from a young person, and they use that image to blackmail them or sex mail them into providing other images or other types of things, and it can be horrific stuff for the child. And you can imagine as an adult how, if somebody had an image of you and was threatening to put that image up on Facebook or on Google or online on social media, how stressed out you would be. Imagine if you were a 13-year-old girl or a 13-year-old boy, the stress is there. So really what's important there, and I keep going back and saying all the time, is that, that communication pathway is very important, so that the child who receives that approach, that they know where to go, that they have that confidence to go to an adult, a parent or adult, and say, look, I have a problem here, I need help, because it's very difficult from dealing on their own. Harvesting, okay, having open settings and unsecured settings, people can go in there, just open the doors open, and they can walk in and they can take, images there, and they can use those images then, to put up on, prostitute websites or advertise child pornography websites, and people don't know that their images are being used, and that's a difficult, and they find out, and it's very upsetting for them and for their families. And sexting, again, the use of uploading self-generated image is a real problem for us. We see that time and time again, and it's very, very difficult to deal with, because children, where they might be shy and they might be guarded face-to-face with an adult or another young person, when it's online, they seem to let their guard down, and when their guard is down, then they're exposed. I mean, I was looking at, I have it with me here, and actually I used it in some of my talks. It's an actual extract from a chat that took place in a chat room between an adult and a young person, a very young girl of 12 years of age. And within 3 questions, the perpetrator was asking for a picture. So it's not a case whereby the online grooming takes. Sometimes it can build up over a long period of time, but in a lot of the cases it's very quick. And if the child says no or shuts down, well, then they move on to the next person. So this moves very, very quick. Another area where it was a new topical area, the difficult area for us, the police, is the live streaming, where somebody is paying for the live streaming of child abuse in another jurisdiction. Again, and they just delete the link then and it's gone, and we're evidentially we're in difficulties there in some cases. So we're looking at that, and that we're working with PayPal, and we're looking at metrics and that we can see can we see indicators for that. Obviously, all those dangers, all those type of crimes that happen online are there to target children. They can be difficult to investigate. And Gardaí simply can't do it on our own. We work very, very well with TUSLA in terms of our coordinated approach. So in relation to our self-taken images, which is our problem, as I said, when we approach the family, when we go to that family and we say, your son or daughter has uploaded an image onto social media, and we're here to talk to you about that. We, as the guards, we don't go alone. We bring Tusla with us. So we're doing the criminal end of it. We're trying to find out, you know, what has led the child into this. Why is the child sexualised? That the child is sending this image. And then Tusla are there really importantly to deal with the welfare of the child and the welfare of the family, because it's a massive shock. You can imagine, you know, Garda Síochána and Tusla arriving at your door and asking a question saying, look, your daughter's or your son has uploaded an image. It's a massive shock to the family. So I'll finish up and say that it's not just one thing that's going to correct the dangers online to children. It's not just one body that's going to correct that. You know, it's everybody in this room. It's all our agencies collectively that are working there. It's a bit like a wheel, you know, with spokes in it. If all the spokes are in place and tight, the wheel is strong. If you take out one of the spokes, then the wheel is weak and collapses. So it's making sure that we have that strength, you know, within the industry, within the state departments, within the NGO sectors, within our homes and within our communities. That's how we protect our children. Thank you.
Thanks, Damien. It's kind of terrifying, really.
What's terrifying is that you can't really arrest your way out of this issue. That's why you need all the stakeholders working together and each playing their own role.
Okay. Shifra, can I come to you? Because we're actually talking about you and your friends and lots of younger children in particular. And, you know, listening to this conversation, I just think you're all under terrible threat all the time with dreadful things happening. But from your point of view, what's this about and what are the issues?
Well, I suppose I'm very lucky to say, thanks to my work with WebWise and just kind of my knowledge in general, I haven't been involved in anything negative online, but I know it does exist. And I wanted to get involved with WebWise because I know that I haven't known a world without the internet, and I know me and my peers are growing up in a world with the internet, and I want to be able to help everyone, and I can see these issues firsthand. And I kind of understand it, and I just want to be able to help and make that change for the future. And I suppose we use WebWise, we meet together to make a lot of different resources for parents, for teachers, for people my age, for people younger than me. It's just, I think it's really important that everyone gets a say in together. And I think it's important for young people to kind of know who they can go to. I suppose a big thing is if they have been involved with anything negative online, they may feel guilt or embarrassment because of this, so they mightn't be inclined to go to their parents, but it's important that they know that you don't have to necessarily go to your parent or guardian. You can go to older brother or sister that you're very close to, maybe your grandparent, a teacher, anyone at all. So I just I'm very interested in internet safety because I know it is the way of the future, and I want to be able to help.
Okay, thanks for that, Shifra. I'll come back to you in a minute, but Anya, maybe from the parents' side of this, knowing that all these dreadful things are going on as soon as the bedroom door is closed and they've disappeared in with their smartphone or their computer. Ban it? Ban all this technology? What's the Parents' Council's perspective
Yeah, and I think
on this?
understandably sometimes that is what parents feel maybe they need to do is, you know, if it's that much of a risk, then let's get rid of it and get rid of the risk in that respect. And I think listening to the other panel members, you're hearing from I suppose, as you say, the cutting edge of risk, and then you're hearing a young person who said they haven't come across any of that. And I think that really illustrates the balance that we have to get here. And in working with parents and talking to parents, I suppose just to give a little bit of a context of what we do, we have a helpline for parents for all sorts of different issues, but we do take calls from parents who have concerns around their child's internet safety, and we also do training sessions in schools. And we've met over 12,000 parents through those sessions over the last number of years. So we're hearing from them on a regular basis over a period of time of the types of things that are concerning them. And I think a lot of what's happening, and Tanya's alluded to this as well, is the fact that they're parenting, listening to it from a risk perspective nearly all of the time. They're always hearing the news stories about where something has gone badly wrong. And they're feeling that they're parenting within a vacuum because they feel that they don't have the skills and knowledge to parent around this. And I think that's where we're falling down maybe in terms of parents understanding that all of the skills that they have around parenting equally apply to the technology world as well. And I think when we start to have discussions with like that with parents and young people, they start to understand that maybe this isn't so different. And I suppose it also has been touched on earlier with water safety, but we'd have to make an analogy with road safety as well. We know that children die every year on the roads. If parents were told they had to keep their children off the roads because of that until they were 16, there would be an outcry. So that, I think, illustrates the sense of children's rights to experience the world around them, and I think that has to be very, very much protected online as well, and that we have to balance that sense of risk and protection with their sense of we're expecting children and young people to live in this digital world. We're now getting smart homes. Everything we're doing is requiring technology and internet access. And we know from child development that the younger we engage with children around skills, around developing values, around managing and navigating society, the earlier we start with children, the better equipped they're going to be. And I think the other thing that that often when we're talking about that, well, should we just take children away from the internet and then they'll be safe? We've a lot to learn from the real world in terms of the online world. We've never managed, through all the legislation, through all the parenting, through everything else, we've never managed to fully protect children in the real world. So I think we need to take a lot of what we're looking for within the day-to-day lives of children and parents and apply that. And one of the things that we know is that when children are harmed, either on the online world or the real world, the harm often comes from their feeling that they can't tell anybody. And I think sometimes that comes through the messages we give young people and the mixed messages we give young people. And I make the analogy that makes me sound very old now, but when I was growing up, girls were often told, don't come home here pregnant. Now, it was the last thing parents actually meant. They didn't want their child not to feel that they could go to them if they were in difficulty, but there was almost this kind of this threat that, you know, this is the worst thing you can possibly do. So I think parents need to be very careful about the messages they're given that are managing their own fears for their children, which are natural fears and natural protection feelings. But we know that children who find themselves in real difficulty don't tell somebody, and we need to find ways to help children tell. And I think even some of the messages we hear going out to children, don't talk to strangers online. Now, I don't know anymore what that means, because last night, again, this might make me sound a little bit dated, but I was playing Words with Friends. Okay, I was playing with 2 people in America and I think 1 person in the UK. I don't know them. They're strangers to me. But I play that most evenings. It's a pass. And we know that young people play FIFA with people in China and Canada and all. So when we're saying to children, don't talk to people online you don't know, what does that mean? And then when the child gets into difficulty and all they've heard is don't talk to strangers, well, how do they come back from that? How do they come to their parent or to their teacher or to anybody who has continuously said to them, don't do this? They now find themselves in difficulty. How do they go and talk to somebody about that? So I think we need to be really, really careful about the conversations we're having with children. And we need to be, and this has been said across the panel already, we need to be listening more than we're telling. And we need to negotiate, I think, rules and ways of working with the internet and understand that adults know something about the internet, and children often know very different things about the internet. So when we started working in this area, we would have heard very much from adults that their children know so much more than them about anything to do with the internet. That's changing. We're hearing now parents saying that they feel that they know as much, if not more, than their children, but they know different things. And I think that's where some of the difficulties are arising.
Okay, thanks for that, Anya. Ryan, Google.
Sure.
You invented this problem.
Oh, did we? Okay.
What are you doing about it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm delighted to be here and to talk about Google's approach to safety. I think share a very strong common cause with everyone here in that what we want is for people to have a positive experience when they go online, whether they're young or old. And that cuts across online safety, privacy, security, a whole range of issues. And just maybe talk a little bit about how we approach the issue of online safety and the different elements that we see from Google's point of view. And the 3 sort of main themes are education and empowerment, technological innovation, and then working in partnership. So I think they tie up with what's been said already, and hopefully they may offer some food for thought for later. In terms of education and empowerment, I mean, that's been raised as one of the key themes for today. on Google and YouTube, obviously we want people to be empowered to take action if they see something inappropriate. So we have tools that allow people to report inappropriate content, and we have community policies that are enforced 24/7 by teams of people working around the world. Shortly, we're going to be expanding our transparency in that area, because I think people do need a bit more feedback in terms of, well, what's happening when I report content online. So again, as a way of empowering users, we're launching a transparency report which will allow people to see, well, what action have we taken, what process have we applied. But I mean, the broader field of education is very important to us as well. We have a number of programs. And obviously we have a sort of fat folder here of different initiatives that are happening, but sort of Google's contribution is in a number of areas. We recently launched in Ireland Be Internet Legends, which is a program that can be run in schools online and offline for children between the ages of 7 and 11. But it has a kind of a nice sort of take-home aspect to it, and there's an online game that children can play with their parents, or can work through with their parents, because I think often, I know only if you find this sometimes, your children don't always bring back everything that they learn in school and kind of bring you into the loop. I know from my point of view, my kids often give me a very partial account of what they've learned in school, but I think it is important that there's some opportunity for parents to kind of engage with what's on the curriculum. We also have online training for teachers to help them navigate the area of digital citizenship. And we recently ran an online safety symposium with the National Association of Principals and Deputy Principals about how that can be of assistance to teachers. So those are some of the things we do in Ireland. We push it out through school talks and so on. I think another important aspect of this, and maybe something that might have general application, is using the platforms themselves as a form of education. Because obviously if the platforms are what kids are using. So if young people are on YouTube, they're engaging with creators who are putting up the content they want to see. We have a program called Creators for Change, which actually brings those creators in to kind of actually help with the education of the young people who are using the platform. I think that's a very useful model. So that's the education empowerment side. Obviously, as a tech company, we look at this through the lens of what innovations can we apply that will actually be of assistance. And we've been thinking about this, for years, ever since we've been in existence. But we recently launched in Ireland Family Link, which is a opportunity for parents to create an account for their child that allows them to use the internet and use the different online services, but where the parent is in control. So the parent can set the ground rules in terms of a whole range of things, what apps can be used, when they can be used, set a sort of digital bedtime for children and so on. And it really allows parents and children and families to work out, well, what are the ways we want to use this resource here, because I think, as many people have said, the opportunities online are huge for people of all age. Just speaking from YouTube, the number of hours of sort of educational material that's watched now is just stratospheric, and it's something that people use YouTube for, more than many other things. So other tech tools like we have YouTube Kids, safe search on Google Search, so people can be protected from inappropriate content. So we would see our role under that pillar as, as the tech company, providing the tools that are going to help parents, educators, and experts in this field to actually create a safer environment. And the third element then is partnerships, and this is hugely important, because I think, as we said at the outset, this is a huge challenge for everybody. No one company, no one NGO is ever going to come up with the overall solution here. So we're very focused on working in partnerships, and we do have a lot of that at EU level. We're members of the Alliance for Better Protection of Minors Online, the ICT Coalition for Children Online. In Ireland, we're a member of Hotline.ie, so we support their work in providing a route for reporting of illegal content. And we are involved also sort of in industry-wide initiatives on the illegal content side to make sure that we're staying one step ahead of perpetrators. We have a sort of a sharing of identifiers of material that may be circulating around on the web, and we're able to kind of make sure that if it's detected on our platform, that other industry bodies get it as well. So those are kind of the three pillars, and maybe just kind of to generalize it a little bit, three things that may be worth looking at today. You know, how do we empower parents and children? How do we make sure there's innovation in technology so that as new problems and controversies are identified, that there are the tools available there that can address it? And then how do we ensure that we have really strong, solid partnerships with all the right experts, all the right interest groups, all the right industry bodies that are working day by day to address the issue?
Can I just pose one question to you, maybe? Because you are the organisations that actually invent the things, you know, you create the apps and the...
Not personally.
you create in the industry a lot of the things that then become the medium that can be abused. What do you think is the biggest responsibility in that regard for the industry in terms of not addressing the bad things when they've happened, but actually helping to stop them happening?
So I think that we have, I suppose we do benefit from having, you know, we're a young company, from 20 years, less than 20 years old, I think, but, you know, in internet terms, we're there at the start, I suppose, or close to the start. So we do benefit from, you know, that experience and so on, and also the technological innovation. But I think it does, as Anna said earlier, it is moving to the stage of trying to stay one step ahead now of what the next thing is. So, and we're increasingly using technology for that challenge. So in cases like illegal content such as violent extremist content and so on, we're now increasingly using machine learning. So this is the kind of the cutting edge of technological research being applied to identify material that shouldn't be on our platform. And like I think at this stage now, 98% of the material we remove under that category has been flagged by a algorithm that we've developed. But I think we also still maintain the importance of human review. So we have teams of human reviewers who take final decision on these takedowns. Okay. And I think that is important to maintain.
Real people.
Real people, yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to ask Shifra just to comment before I close this session, because I know people really want to get talking about these issues at the tables. So Shifra, you know, this session is a kind of a first open discussion of this nature, and it's about trying to create a long-term plan that would improve things, and obviously the beneficiaries are going to be people of your generation in particular. What would you say to everybody here that they should try and do that would be really valuable for young people and younger children particularly?
Well, I think the main thing is when you're kind of deciding how to go forward and putting plans in places to keep everybody in mind. The internet is for everyone, and to keep in mind that the young people that you're educating are going to be using it in future. So it's kind of to just be aware that everyone should maybe be brought up on the same level. Nobody should be told that they don't know as much, or nobody should be thinking maybe a parent or a teacher shouldn't be telling a younger child or student that I know more than you and you're not right. So just kind of everyone's on the one level, and we're learning together and we're going forward together, and just kind of keep everyone on the same level together. Okay, thanks, Shifra. And because I'm a big softie when it comes to facilitation, Tanya wanted to get a last word.
Just one last word. I suppose we've talked a lot about, I suppose, education for children and young people and for parents. And I suppose it's really important in that not to let industry off the hook as well. And it's great to hear Google is doing so much. But there's actually a lot more that industry could be doing actually to protect children's data and to protect children and young people from harm. So why are we giving over our data to them at all to be marketed and exploited for commercial purposes? Why can't we say, no, you can't have the data or exploit the data until someone reaches the age of 16? Of course, there are complaints mechanisms at the moment in some of the platforms, but we know some of them have been slow to take down offensive material. So we do need to think about a digital safety commissioner. The government is committed to that. Think about what powers that digital safety commissioner should have to protect children and young people online. And just one of the other things I think to think about is how children and young people can harm each other online as well, and what are the solutions in relation to that. We talked about some children have sent images of other children to each other, potentially being liable for a very serious criminal offence. Children are harming each other in terms of bullying each other, harassing each other sometimes, or oversharing. What kind of measures do we need to put in place to try and minimise those kinds of events in children and young people and educate them? But what should the Digital Safety Commissioner do in relation to that as well? So just some of the questions I think to think about. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Tanya. Okay, so plenty of food for thought there. So I'm going to say thank you very much to this first panel.